Some people will recognize why this face is here, some of you won't. I'll leave that up to you to decode for yourselves. I'm going to talk about apostrophes, but before I get started, I want to make some disclaimers. I'm definitely not an apostrophes Nazi. I don't have bees in my bonnets about the use of apostrophes. It doesn't ruin my day to see a misused apostrophe. I've never contemplated suicide because of an apostrophe. The presenter was doing brilliantly until a string of badly used apostrophes ruined his talk. He brought deep shame upon his company, his team, his country, and worst of all, himself. I've seen phrases like this used before. I'm sure you've seen things like this, and really the people who get that upset about the misuse of apostrophes should get a life. It's not that serious. I'm just telling you about this because it keeps coming up, but really it doesn't make any difference whatsoever, and anybody who gets that upset about it needs to have something done to themselves rather than you have something done about your use of apostrophes. If you know how to use apostrophes already, bail out now. You don't need the rest of this presentation. You might want to just come along for the ride, but you don't need it. You might spot other errors in this presentation. I'm only talking about apostrophes. The debate about proper and common nouns is off limits from now on. There are others. See if you can find them. None of the apostrophes in this disclaimer have been used correctly. So if you've gone all the way through this disclaimer slide not realizing that every single apostrophe in it has been misused, then you need the rest of this presentation. And the rest of this presentation starts with the possessive apostrophe. If you remember only one thing from this presentation, remember this phrase, the possessive apostrophe, and that will remind you and jog your memory about how you apply the use of apostrophes to anything that you're writing. Almost anything that you're writing. About 90% of the cases will be covered by this. If you can't remember the phrase, the possessive apostrophe, remember the joke. I can't believe I went out with an apostrophe. He was so possessive. When one thing owns something else, that's what we mean by the possessive apostrophe. When one thing owns something else, that signifies possession. Bob's laptop. So this is the possessive apostrophe in use. Bob owns the laptop, and therefore it's Bob's laptop, and it's Bob apostrophe S laptop. Okay, there's other examples. So for example, the developer's code. The developer owns the code, therefore it's the developer apostrophe S code. The chef's hat. The pilot's aircraft. The son's homework. My manager's feedback, and so on. You can see all of these are where the person owns the thing that we're talking about, and so we therefore need to apply an apostrophe, and it's apostrophe S. Okay, sometimes though there's more than one. We know them as plurals. So hats, if there are 12 hats, then it's hats without an apostrophe, not hats with an apostrophe S. If it's gloves, if there's several pairs of gloves, then it's gloves without the apostrophe. If there are several pens, then it's pens without the apostrophe. If there are more than one laptop, then it's laptops without the apostrophe. So you can see sometimes you're using a possessive apostrophe, and sometimes you just put an S on the end to signify that it's a plural. There's multiple of these things. Okay, there is an exception to the rule, and the exception to the rule is its. I've just gone to great lengths to say to you that when you have an apostrophe S, it signifies possession. But in this case, I've been telling you that the apostrophe means possessive. In this case, it doesn't. In this case, it means it is. So it's raining means it is raining. It doesn't mean something owns the rain. If you want to use a possessive apostrophe, well, you can't actually. If you want to signify possessiveness or ownership, then you do it by removing the apostrophe with its. So look at this phrase, the laptop and its hard drive. You would think, bearing in mind everything I've just told you, you would think that its would be IT apostrophe S, because it's signifying that it owns something, isn't it? But that's not the case. You just remove the apostrophe in this case. It's the only word which is an exception to the rule, and the reason it's an exception to the rule is because English is a ridiculous language with hundreds of exceptions to the rule, which makes it difficult to learn. So that's what you would type. You would type its, I-T-S. Sometimes you have possessives and plurals together. So for example, the boys' den. So these boys all made this den together, and you can see here that it's S apostrophe. It's actually a shortened form of the boys' den. And you can have the girls' party, or you would have the girls' party, but you just leave the S off the very end. So it's the boys apostrophe den, the girls apostrophe party. Sometimes you can have, multiple boys own multiple things. Like in this example, we've got the men's cars. There's many men, there's many cars, and the many men own the many cars. The boys' toys. There's two boys, there's more than two cars, and so the boys own the cars between them. Okay, that's it. The only thing you really need to remember, as I said at the beginning, is for 90% of the cases where you're going to use an apostrophe, just remember that phrase, the possessive apostrophe. If you can't remember the phrase, remember the joke. I can't believe I went out with an apostrophe. He was so possessive. There is an exception, and the exception is the word its. Normally an apostrophe signifies ownership. In this case, you use the word its without an apostrophe. That's it, you're done. That's all you need to know. That will cover you for most of the scenarios where you will need to use an apostrophe, and you only really need to remember the possessive apostrophe as a phrase, and its is an exception to the rule. Hope you enjoyed it. Bye.